Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah.
Flobbedob, blib, blob, bleep.
You don't actually think you're making your video better by blathering in another language before making relevant points, do you? Whatever. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Meet some guy whose name I'm never going to pronounce properly, and he seems to think that if you're an atheist, not only are you sinful, but you also have no free will. Have a look.
Don't be like those who forgot about Allah, and as a result, Allah made them forget about themselves. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how is it that the moment I forget about Allah, I'm therefore forgetting about myself? What's the correlation here?
Really? There is none. There are two ways to interpret what was just said. The first is that we knew about Allah and then somehow forgot. The other is that we were followers and then rejected Him. Either way, neither should have an effect on who we are and our ability to know it. But if you think you have a case to make, let's hear it.
Well, the idea is that if you take a person who completely rejects the idea of a creator,
and that's bad.
You're kind of rejecting the idea of anything divine. You'll often hear the atheists say, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in any angels, and therefore I don't believe in the soul either.
The soul being what? Some ghost inhabiting this meat body that gets to live on forever after it dies? That's some nice wishful thinking there. But until you can show any evidence of it, that's all it is.
Now, the moment you reject the idea of the soul, what are you left with? What is a human being?
Flesh, blood, and bone. Your point being?
A human being is really just a product of two factors, nature and nurture. Now, your nature is what you're a result of because of your parents. Essentially, the sperm and the egg that produced your DNA, that produced your body. You have to admit that these things were not chosen. Nobody chose to be born, male or female or their race or any of these factors. Nobody chose their DNA.
So there's something in life we didn't choose. And
so therefore nobody chose their brain.
No comment. I lied. I'm gonna comment. We may not have chosen our brain, but we do choose what we do with it. Or do we? Let's suppose just for a moment that our brain really is just a meat computer and free will is just an illusion. And what we believe has no bearing on that. No matter how hard you may try to believe in the soul, no matter how much you may wish that free will exists, and no matter how much distress it might cause you to think that it doesn't, too bad. And it doesn't matter what it says in your Quran either.
But just because you like something in a book doesn't mean you can have the thing you like in the book happen in real life. That's what crazy people want.
Then if you look at nurture, did anybody choose where they were born? Or the first things they interacted with, or the first things that they saw? No. So really, if you're just a product of nature and nurture, both of which you have not chosen, then you have to admit you don't have any choice. You don't have any free will.
That's one hell of a leap. So we didn't choose two things in our lives, and therefore we have no choice in anything? Plus, nurture is kind of a misnomer here. Sure, we were raised by our parents, but we also had friends, enemies, pets, school, our environment, various experiences that help shape who we are. And that doesn't stop after we grow up and leave home. We're constantly being shaped by our experiences, by the results of our choices. To limit nurture to our parents is an oversimplification at best, or worse, woeful naivete. True, there are parts of life that we don't get to choose, but there are plenty that we do. Sometimes we recognize our natural impulses to be bad for us based on previous experience, and we choose to act in spite of our nature and nurture. Do you claim that's not a choice? And even if none of these are choices, so what? How does that lend any validity to the belief that free will does exist?
Now, what is free will? Essentially, it's your identity. When you think about how you identify somebody, you say, oh, this guy's a nice guy. Why is he a nice guy? Well, what you're really saying is that he makes nice choices. He chooses to be kind. He chooses to be generous, etc.
Except that's not true. Free will is not your identity or the choices you've made. It's the ability to make choices at all. And even if that's what you meant, you've expressed it very badly.
These descriptions of an identity is based on choices. And so the moment you remove the idea of a soul and remove the idea of choice, you remove the idea of identity as well.
Words. Just words.
First, you claim without any basis that a soul is required to make choices. Then you claim that an identity, that a person as an individual cannot be recognized as such without being the result of free will. And even if all of this is true, you're still left with the problem of proving that souls exist. You're claiming a lot of knowledge on subjects about which you seem to know very little for certain.
Only a numbskull thinks he knows things about things he knows nothing about.
I think an easy way of understanding this is by simply taking a look at Siri. Siri, right, on everybody's phone,
Well, not everybody's phone.
doesn't have any free will. Now, even if it might appear that way, let's say theoretically, a child picks up a phone and that phone says,
I am an atheist.
now the moment that Siri said that, the child might think, oh, this phone has an opinion. This phone, is an atheist.
Well, just how many gods do you think Siri believes in? As long as that number is 0, Siri is an atheist, free will or no free will.
And what would you tell this child? You'd say, look, I understand that it might look that way because the phone spoke. But the reality is that there's factors that cause this. In other words, the phone was manufactured, it had a nature, it was manufactured in a factory, and then it was sold and somebody bought it and somebody typed in these words, I am an atheist, and that was its nurture, both of which, is this sounding familiar? Both of which, the nature and the nurture, Siri didn't choose.
Are you seriously likening the coding of a computer program, a program which is static and unchangeable, barring physical damage to the device which runs it, with the raising of a child whose personality is malleable? These religious analogies always knock me out. Look, here's something that's superficially similar to something else. I'll use it to make an analogy which can be easily shown to be deeply flawed. I understand wanting to make your point, but could you at least craft it well enough to convince more than just the gullible? Oh wait, it's religion. Of course you can't.
Some of you might be thinking, why is this Muslim talking about beliefs in atheism? Well, you don't have to take it from me. You can take a look at the very famous Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss. They're talking about how, from their perspective, there's no room for free will. Even Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist, has a quote where he describes human beings as having the illusion of choice.
Well, yes, free will does appear to be an illusion if you really think about it. The universe, of which we are a part, is a series of actions and reactions between matter and energy, and that includes brain activity, which doesn't really leave a lot of room for free will. But I say again, suppose that's true. And?
But why is it that so many atheists believe in free will? I would argue that the appeal of atheism, to a large degree, is the concept of freedom. You think to yourself, I don't have to be shackled by the rules of some God, or I don't want to be judged every moment of every day and then, have to pay for whatever I've done.
First of all, you say the appeal of atheism. But a lot of atheists aren't non-believers because it was an attractive notion. Indeed, to a lot of atheists, the notion was terrifying or appalling. However, to the rational-minded, atheism appeared to be the truth based on a skeptical analysis of the available data. True, not having religion's grotesque and dictatorial dogma ruling over our lives is a great side benefit, but to characterize it as the reason to be an atheist is proof that you've spoken to very few.
I find that atheism is promoted, it's advertised through the concept of free will. In fact, if you take a look at the following image, you'll see this atheist campaign in which it reads, "There's probably no God, now stop worrying and enjoy your life."
That actually says very little, if anything, about free will. You don't need free will for freedom.
Think about that last portion. Enjoy your life. Another way of saying that is,
Not your job to do. Whenever somebody opposed to an idea reinterprets someone else's words, they usually do it to serve their own ends rather than taking it as intended.
You never had a camera in my head.
But as long as we're here, hit me. Let's hear it.
just exercise your free will. Do whatever you want.
See? I knew you'd get it wrong. What it says is to stop worrying and enjoy your life. In other words, if there is no God, then all of those persnickety rules with eternal consequences are a steaming pantload that aren't worth all of that anxiety. It's not talking about exercising free will. If we have no free will to exercise when there is a God, then we'd never do anything but obey God, and all of that garbage about sinning wouldn't be necessary, and signs like that one wouldn't exist. Whether free will exists or not, that sign is addressing fear and stress with regard to religion and how it's unnecessary.
In conclusion, the moment somebody says, I'm an atheist, you can always ask them, well, do you believe in free will? If they say yes, then they have a really hard time justifying why they do.
In other words, you're going to employ diversion tactics to distract us from the fact that it's your job to prove that your God exists. Isn't dishonesty a sin in your world?
I mean, think about it. What are they going to say? Yes, I do, but I know that I'm from nature and nurture, and there are no other factors. I didn't choose nature, I didn't choose nurture. The argument of complexity doesn't make any sense. So anywhere the atheist turns, he's kind of stuck.
Unlike with theists asked whether or not a God exists, atheists rarely give absolute black or white yes-no answers. Even a yes on the question of free will is going to come with a fair amount of bet hedging. On the one hand, there is certainly the appearance of free will. The choices we make certainly seem to be how free will would manifest itself if it existed. However, the available data would suggest that free will is an illusion. But it must be admitted that we don't know everything about the universe yet, not enough to give a definitive answer. But unlike with claims in the Bible made about God's existence and the nature of the universe, many of which have been debunked with science and evidence, claims of free will's existence have not been accompanied by such historical claims, and all scientific claims are still up in the air. After all, the people who say that there is no free will would have to prove a negative. And that's not their job. The people who say that free will does exist will have to prove that it does. But until either one is done, the question is still unresolved.
But like we mentioned earlier, the moment he says, no, I don't believe in free will, then you saying the words, I don't believe in free will, wasn't your choice. You chose to do it as much as Siri, and Siri is not an atheist.
How many gods does Siri believe in again? Pretty sure it's 0. Atheist. And so what if you said you don't believe in free will when you don't have free will? So the matter and energy of the universe happen to collide in such a way as to produce an accurate conclusion about itself. So what?
So really, if you really want to put it concisely, just take the sentence, I am an atheist, right? The moment you ask the question, do you believe in choice? If the person says, yes, I believe in choice, you can put an X on the word atheist. They're not atheists. I'm sorry. If you believe in choice, that means you believe in some kind of a soul, something that is supernatural.
Bull fucking shit. You cannot prove that choice requires the supernatural, nor can you prove that it requires a soul. And even if that is the case, atheists don't believe in gods. You can believe in Gandalf, Harry Potter, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, vampires and ghosts, but so long as gods aren't on that list, you're still an atheist.
But if the person says, no, I reject the idea of free will, well then you can put an X on the words I am, because you don't have free will.
You don't need free will to exist. And the number of gods believed in is still 0. Atheist.
So I leave you with the same advice that I began with, the divine wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who states, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ
Blah, blah, blah. Yakari, smakari.
Don't be like those who forgot about Allah, and as a result, He made them forget about themselves.
And that's just lunacy. If free will exists, if a soul exists and it's your God's fault, forgetting about him is, at worst, ungrateful. Barring debilitating head trauma, I'm still gonna remember me one way or another. And I'm spent. I think I made my point. So until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please, think. Don't wait. Rate today. Operators are standing by.